Normally I try to introduce, I usually do a poor job of it anyway, but I think Penny and Amy can introduce themselves as members of IGIC and kind of talk to us about their experiences in Utah earlier this fall. Go ahead, guys.
Okay.
Thanks for tuning in.
I'm Amy Logan, and I work as a GIS analyst at Iowa State University. And Penny, you want to introduce yourself?
I'm Boone County's GIS coordinator, serving a one-year sentence as chair of IGIC, and I do a little work for, or a little serve on a board for MAGIC as well, the Mid-America GIS Consortium, which is a nice resource for those of you who don't know about it. Free sign up. It's good to have all that information, all those people hanging around that you can ask questions of. Amy and I did a little a little trip last fall. Well, it was technically fall.
October.
Went to Iowa on an exchange program. It was an experience, I'll tell you. Starting with, we were supposed to get in, I don't know what, 7 o'clock or so, maybe 8. We were supposed to arrive at our hotel after, get our rental car and drive across the mountains a little bit and to Bryce Canyon. And we had an adventure. Needless to say, this was an adventure. Our flight was delayed. We do appreciate that they fix those mechanical issues before we take off from the airport. So we had a delayed flight. We got in late, got the car, grabbed a little bite to eat, and headed out, and discovered that our weather just went to hell. And before we got clear up into the mountains, it was a full-on blizzard, and Amy had not had much experience or any experience driving on mountain roads. So we decided maybe I would drive, and literally crawling along at I think our highest speed may have been 25 miles an hour. And then we had to slow down a lot for some of those hairpin, those 15-mile-an-hour hairpin curves up in the mountains. Amy was worried about the wildlife. We saw a lot of wildlife crossing signs, but I said, they're all hunkered down in this blizzard. They are probably not going to be crossing the road. And that turned out to be the case. So it was, visibility was 0. I could look out my side window and see the center line of the road, and I kept tried to keep on the center line. And then once in a while, when you were on a curve, your headlights would pick up a little bit of the edge of the road painting. And so between the two, I did keep it between the ditches. So hooray, we got there late, cold, tired. We didn't quite have the clothing for the weather, so we dressed in layers. We were really bundling up. I've got 3 or 4 shirts on under my fall jacket, but we both had hat and gloves, and it was a wonderful experience. Anyway, this is what we're going to cover today. Talk a little bit about the reason for this exchange, what it is, and the goals. Talk a little about Utah and Eugec, their Utah GIS Consortium, their conferences, some session highlights, our social activities, and maybe some takeaways from our trip. Okay, take it away, Amy.
All right. So for those of you who aren't familiar, a few years ago, I think at our October meeting in 2019, the idea was tossed around that we should maybe start a geospatial conference exchange as a way to get some new people, new ideas, and stuff like that. So I started working on kind of getting something together, but then, the pandemic hit. But even during that, I had reached out to a few different organizations, and they were still interested. And so when things started opening up again in the summer this year, we were contacted by Utah, and they were still interested in doing an exchange with us. So well, it was like August, and we were kind of like, do you think we can pull that off? And so Penny and we applied, and we were able to be the first to do this conference exchange. So we left Des Moines and we went to Denver, and then we flew into St. George, which is about 2.5 hours south of Bryce Canyon, where the conference was. And so, as Petty told you, our harrowing journey in the dark. So we didn't really realize how the elevation change. We started out at about 2,500 feet, and by the time we got to Bryce Canyon, we were at 7,500 feet, and we had driven through all kinds of interesting things, which we saw on the morning we were driving back, which also
It's a good thing you didn't know that there were no guardrails on the road, and it was some pretty steep area. Unfamiliar car, unfamiliar mountain roads in the dark in a blizzard. Yeah, that was about a trifecta right there.
so anyway, I don't know how many of you know much about Utah, so we thought we'd give you a little introduction. Most of our trip was kind of in the south west edge of the state. Utah is quite a bit bigger than Iowa. However, Iowa has 99 counties and Utah only has 29. The interesting thing here that you will note is that the highest point in Iowa is lower than the lowest point in Utah. So that was something very interesting and different for especially me, not being a Midwesterner most of the time. It was very interesting to see all the different landforms and beautiful landscapes. An interesting thing is that the population of Utah and the population of Iowa are very, very similar. However, and our largest cities are about the same size. However, something that is very interesting, and you'll note on this map, is a lot of the population is in urban areas. So on this map, you can see the major interstate, and a lot of cities are located right on there, and those are most of the cities. If you want to learn more about Utah, this web address at the bottom, they have a really great resource there, and it talks about the topography and a lot of different natural features, and as well as oil and gas reserves and lots of other things. So here's a couple other maps, because why wouldn't we show you maps? So looking at this one of the elevation, so where we were in St. George, which is that very southwest corner, we were at one of the lowest points, and then we drove up to kind of in that first little area of the greens. So we were in some of the higher areas of the state, and we had driven maybe 100 miles. So it's just there's a lot of variation in a very small space. And then if you look at the population map, like pretty much all of the cities, major cities, are right there in the center of the state, kind of along those interstate highway areas. And there aren't hardly any kind of on the periphery, which, I mean, part of it is the elevation and just the mountainousness of the area. Penny, do you have anything else you want to say about this part?
Not on that.
Okay. And this is just to give you a little bit more of a close-up of the area that we were in. St. George is where we flew in, and we stayed up in Bryce Canyon City, and just the national parks also, they were a highlight of our trip.
Yes.
And this kind of just shows you again, like how much the topography is changing. So we exchanged with the Utah Geographic Information Council, and they have a smaller board of directors, about 10 people, and the group meets on a monthly basis, whereas we meet quarterly, and they have been a group for a little bit longer than we have, but they really had a great conference, and some really cool things. This logo, if you can see my shirt, they had great conference shirts. Penny's, I think, is in greens and browns.
Blues, blue and green.
Blue and green. And so there were two different kinds. And they also had a lot of swag, it seemed like. They had different Eugec polos and button down zips, sweatshirts, lots of things. Like every day it seems like they had different things. So
They
I
had a
think that was,
different shirts, sometimes multiple times a day, but they apparently buy themselves shirts for every event, and they hold many events. So, and I think some of them have served a long time.
yeah. So moving on to the conference mechanics, some things that were interesting that we thought we would highlight. One thing, when we checked in, they gave us lots of tickets, and
This is something, yeah, this is something that we talked about, and we really want to maybe piggyback on this idea. You've got a ballot for each of the categories, and they have a lot of categories, which we'll talk about and show you later. But we would like to maybe hand out those tickets. Then they had a envelope stapled up or taped to each of their entries, and you just went around and looked at all the ones that matched the category and chose and stuck your ticket in. And it was a really nice way to vote.
yeah.
And their app. Their app was another huge. There's a link to it there, and I recommend you go and look at it.
Do you want me
It
to
was
live
so
demo?
well
Okay.
structured and so yeah, you could you want to display it streamlined. It had all the information. It had maps, which I've for
Can you
years
see
I've been
it?
saying, good grief, we're a mapping organization and I can't find my damn room. So maybe we could have a map that was easy to find and not a paper map that I had to cart around. So
Are you able
I
to
think
see
this is
my screen?
no, we don't see that one. You may have to do your sharing and choose a different window to share.
There we go. Do you
But
see
I
it now?
highly recommend that we adopt this, this app. You get information on your speakers, their bio and their pictures, and you can favorite everything in here. Their agenda is great for each day.
And
Information about it just by clicking on it and favoriting them. And we all have something similar to that. But here's the good part. You've got some floor plans, and their conference was held in 3 different locations, 2 different hotels, and then the Ebenezer Barn and Grill. That's not a misprint. It was not bar, it's barn and grill. It was a converted barn and a big stage. And the walks between could be 5 to 7 minutes of brisk walking. But since the weather was pretty cold and snowy, we walked briskly. And you're, of course, hauling your conference bag with you from one to the other. We got some exercise, worked off some food, and got to get out in the fresh air, so kept you alert. It was a good time, I have to say. I really loved their. We don't have we don't have a venue like that. I don't know if we have one anywhere in Iowa, but that was an amazing venue.
okay, I'll get back to the PowerPoint.
This is mostly the Amy Logan show. I'm along for color commentary for the most part.
And then
we did enjoy our Stanley Cup, our Stanley mug. That was a nice gift.
and it had like some of the major vendors' sponsor names on it.
And Amy and I have both rescued ours from our local gym already, but they're easy to find in the lost water bottle section because they really stand out. Nobody else has one like it.
So,
So
as Penny had said, there was some difficulty if you had a session that went over, you had to like really haul it to, you know, one of the other locations. And it could also prove to be challenging for people that might have mobility issues, but it also provided us with a lot of fresh air and movement breaks. I think Penny and I both agreed that this might be the most healthy we've felt at a conference.
yeah, their food wasn't as good as ours, but and maybe that's not a bad thing.
And then another challenge was that their conference committee and the staff for the conference was made up of just the board, whereas like when during our conference we might bring in extra people to do like registration booth or some specific areas of the conference. So it just seemed like that was one area where
I did find in my notes where they had hired 2 interns to help with their conference registration setup, that kind of thing. But they
okay.
had their quarters were cramped. They had a room as big as, not even as well, about the size of what I'm sitting in, little tiny dining area. They had a small room that they were stuffed in to handle registration and you know, handing out swag and tickets and all and questions. It was a tiny little room.
So conference session highlights.
Okay, I picked 3 of my favorites to talk about. First was UMet. That's their technical team for disaster mapping response, their emergency management or response technical team. There is a website there, and they have a phone number on that website for people to activate the team. Call them up and say, hey, you know, Boone County just blew down in this wind today. We're going to need trained teams. These people, they take all of the NIMS training, the ICT, incident command training, that sort of thing. So they are ready to go. They run disaster scenarios so they can practice skills and also teach around the state. They can show people what their organization, what their GIS professional mappers can bring to a disaster, what kind of a response they can provide, help they can provide. They have an ArcGIS online account for emergency use, so it's set up in their collaborations with the various counties on this. It's used for distributing public information, maps and apps, and information to the public during a disaster. And they also encourage that you set up ArcGIS online collaborations between your neighboring counties so that, you know, if Story County goes down, I've got access to all their online maps and apps over here, and they just pop over and run from, you know, a conference room in Boone County. That's that sort of situation. It's really good to, and Matt and I have kind of tossed that back and forth a few times. They're also AT&T FirstNet emergency responder priority network calls. So when the phone lines get all jammed up in emergency, this group can get their calls through. It's a really nice organization, and I'd kind of like to take several pages from their book for the same kind of group we will set up here in Iowa. Okay, next one. Yellow is the new green. See that sign? This is a lawn watering sign or a non-watering sign people put up. They have water troubles in Utah. They are one of the fastest growing states in the nation, and they are in the middle of a historic drought. Almost every bit of the state is in like a severe drought is probably the best part of the state, and the rest of it goes beyond severe to extreme and catastrophic. And what are a couple categories that are? I mean, it is dry. 95% of their water supply comes from snowpack. So this is not a state with a lot of rivers and lakes. They depend on snow and reservoirs, and they haven't been getting that snowpack. But they've got a vigorous program of saving water in place. And Salt Lake City and Sandy City, between the two of them, saved 2.8 billion gallons in 2021 compared to 2020. It's amazing. It's not just they've got strict lawn watering schedules, but they've also got a push to flip from grass to native plants that thrive without any additional watering, and xeriscape kind of things. And they're really, really pushing energy efficient appliances, you name it. Every water saving kind of measure is hugely important, because even with population growth, they are using less water, considerably less water. So their program is really working, and there's a website for it. I didn't put it on here. Oh yeah, drought.utah.gov. Got statewide water resources. Maybe some things to think about. Iowa seems to have a lot of water, especially during the monsoon season when the floods are prevalent. But we also have some of the worst water quality in the nation. Agricultural runoff being a big contributor, of course. So it might be time to take some serious look at water in this state. And NextGen 911, I went to that one because I've been pretty involved in NextGen 911 for Boone County, of course. And they are running it. They have a state office that oversees the project, rather where we have Geocom to do it here. So the project, the training, and all the data is a state office, and they are way behind. They're coding their QC. I'm not sure what programming language they're using, but yikes. They're currently trying to code all that QC. So I sent I had a contact from one of the people on the board presenting this, and I sent him contact information from our Geocom. I thought maybe they could help them out a little bit with some of their QC so they don't have to build it all from scratch. Motorola is their primary contractor, building the infrastructure and providing the NextGen 911 software and router. And I'm not sure. We're just setting up Motorola CAD for ours, and I think Motorola is just getting their toes in the water on this one, and it's going to be a long haul for Utah. That's all I have to say about that. Next slide.
So I attended some sessions that were specifically geared towards user experience. One of them was how to attend a Eugec conference, and this was really helpful. He talked a lot about how to make the most out of presentations and vendor interactions, and like just trying to think about like how to, like maybe you're not interested in the product now, but kind of like adding to your toolbox. Like this is something to learn about, because perhaps, somebody or even you might need it in the future. And then going to the map gallery and kind of looking at all the maps and evaluating how people are doing things and how maybe you would or wouldn't have done things. And then they also talked about getting out and meeting people and networking. And overall, it was just kind of a good session and a good way to get to know some of the other newer people and there were also veteran Eugec people in the room. So kind of a good mixer. Another one that I went to was mentoring the next generation of mapping professionals. And this person was highlighting a program that he was doing in high schools to get kids started thinking about, it was a math competition, but it also involved surveying and geospatial kind of things, as well as trigonometry. And it was good because it was a classroom program that that could reach a broader group of students than just something like an internship where you're reaching one or two individuals. And then I went to Navigating Your GIS Career, and this was kind of a nice introduction. There were a lot of younger people in the audience, and so it was good to see somebody kind of mid-career giving her story and just encouraging people to stick with it and stay positive. So next, we're going to talk about the Eugec professional and social activities. One of the first things that we experienced was the Iron Cartographer. So this was a competition that started around 8:30 in the morning, and it ran until around noon. And it was a head-to-head competition where Michelle and Sean were given some data and some criteria, and they were supposed to kind of come up with a map on the fly. And so it was kind of a fun, just something different that I hadn't seen done.
They had an MC, sort of a Joel Rohn maybe, an MC type who interviewed the audience and the contestants and told jokes and solicited stories and jokes from the people who were there. And it was this was in the barn, the Ebenezer's Barn and Grill. They have their soda fountain machines were set up and available to us throughout. It's and people yeah, hung out and watched. We could see up on the screen what they were doing.
Yeah, it was a live thing.
Yeah, live feed of what they were doing.
So
and then they announced dinner at lunchtime.
Yeah. And then another thing was the map gallery. Penny, do you want to talk about this one?
These I would like you to all look at their categories. Citizen engagement, Utah as art, we'll talk more about that one. Small maps. So maybe you're printing an 8.5 by 11 map of something, maybe the Dragoon River Rock Boone's cleanup of the river. You know, a small map category. It doesn't have to be giant and you know, include huge things to be a good little map. So that would be, you know, we all make probably several good little maps during the year. Let's throw them out and share those. Professional map. So that was for any of your firms that are creating, anybody who's working for a professional firm, an engineering firm, or someone who makes a professional map like that. Student research posters, and my favorite, maybe one of my favorites, the interactive map. So a lot of what we do nowadays is web maps and apps. And so you have a category for that, and you provide a little picture with the URL of your map, and people get to go to it and look at it and judge it that way. So these are exciting ideas. Let's expand our GIS maps and displays with this kind of
Oop.
yeah, here it is.
Oh, and then
go ahead, show
oh,
them the picture
well,
of
and
the
also just to note, see this like envelope with the little map?
sample ballot.
Yeah.
That's where your ticket, and it's got
Um,
the right.
so one that I really enjoyed and Penny really enjoyed was Utah as art. Do you want to tell them about some of the different things that they're
We
seeing on
can,
the
yeah,
screen
we'll
here?
talk a little. I will talk starting on the right. See the deer head? That is topographic maps that were like pasted onto wood and then cut out and assembled into a 3D deer head. I thought it was ugly, but I really appreciated the thought and the work that went into it. And above that one, there are two photos. There you go. This guy took moss, MOSS, different layers, and it's fake moss he got from a store, right? A craft store of some kind. And he cut out by hand the whole world and assembled it with these various shades of moss. And that was
To look like a
amazing.
satellite imagery.
Yeah, it was amazing. Coming down below the moss, we have a wooden carving of some elevation data, which is pretty cool. And then left of that, this is layers and layers of paper cut in. So basically a handmade 3D
Total.
elevation map. I thought it might have been printed with a 3D printer, but no, it was hand cut layers of paper. And then going down again, there we have another version of the whole Earth if we flatten it. And this one is done with nails and string, one of those old string art kinds of thing. These people put a lot of time into their artwork. I'll let Amy discuss the rest of them.
So this one, with the mule deer is a little close up. This one had several different migration patterns of different animals. It was pretty interesting and neat to see that. Some were birds and mule deer and other creatures.
Was that a DNR thing?
Yeah, that was the DNR thing. And then over here, these ones were Utah as art satellite imagery, and they were satellite images that were enhanced with like some DEM
Digital elevation models
elevation
below them
models.
draped over.
Yeah,
Yeah.
to kind of make them pop, and they were really beautiful, as you can see. So there was quite a diversity of Utah's art, and I thought that might be something that would be fun to see, all the creativity that could be displayed if the challenge was put out there. And Penny
I
even was
could
like,
wonder what I
maybe we
could do
could
with
even have.
yarn. Yeah.
Um, and then next, they had quite a variety of different social activities. So they set up a mini golf tournament, and I think this was like their 10th year. They had originally had a regular golf tournament, but the weather is often changing, and so it's hard to predict if there's going to be snow or other inclement weather. So they decided to do an indoor golf tournament, and so they have these uh, it's mostly like candy boxes and things like that, but it was a 7-hole golf tournament, and you had all these barriers and things. Um, and you had to go up inclines, as you can see. So
Work
it was
around
fun.
chairs laying on their sides for like sand. They were chair traps, not sand traps. Yeah, the candy boxes were full, by the way, and you got to take some at the end of the night.
Yeah.
In Utah, maybe a sort of a dry state, but they had they had some beer kegs at their golf tournament. So
And then the Country Western Show, this was part of Ebenezer's Barn and Grill, and it was a real country western show. They did quite a few different artists and kind of a little bit of the history of the area as well.
there were
Another event
tour buses, mostly senior citizens that oh, it was a show and dinner.
and
And
dinner.
it's
Yes.
Ebenezer's puts that on for all during tourist season. So we just piggybacked on part of their ongoing tourist attraction.
And then later in the evening, we went out to a dark area and they had several people that were kind of like narrating a show. And then they also had 10 pretty high powered telescopes out shooting at different constellations and supernovas and the moon and all different great things to see. And it was
Given the
super,
sparse population out in the rural areas of Utah, and the high elevation, it makes it an ideal stargazing area.
it was cold, but it was
Yeah,
definitely worth it. And then this I just included because this was just a view from the parking lot. And I just,
and that is one of our social activities was they gave us an entire afternoon from like noon. They gave us a packed lunch, box lunch at noon, and we headed out and didn't have to be back till 7 for
field trip.
the Ebenezer show. So this is Art and his wife. What was her name?
Andrea.
Andrea. Um, Art, we met at breakfast one day, and Amy went to his session too. But he and his wife have national park passes, and they like to show visitors around their state, newbies who haven't seen it. So he said, if you'd be interested, I'll talk to my wife and we'll pick you up and take you down to Zion National Park, which these are the pictures from there. Some of these were taken with my Android camera most of them while we're driving at about 35, 40 miles an hour. So I'm really, it's the FE, the fan edition. I really recommend it. Holy crap, got some great photos. And then from there, we went up to Bryce Canyon and hiked down to the Queen's Garden, which, what is that? An hour at least a hike down, and then you got to walk back up it. And look how steep it is. We were down in the middle of all those pinnacles there. This is up at the top. Glorious, glorious scenery. I would love to go back. This is as
Yeah.
we're flying out, looking at it from the air. Amy got some pretty good shots of that too. But yeah, dry and beautiful state for sure.
All right.
Now the two of us went, they gave us a free pass to the conference, and we paid, or IGIC paid our expenses, and we roomed together to keep the expenses down, and of course shared the rental car. And so we will be providing 2 tickets to ITAG. IGIC will be picking up the cost for 2 people to come out from Utah next spring. So we're going to have to try to show them. We don't have the natural beauty they've got, but we'll show them a good time anyway. We got some characters here, but they have their own characters out there. It was a fun trip.
Yeah, so it was a great trip, and as you can tell, we did learn a lot, picked up a lot of things that we think could be used. And let's see. Oh, I guess, do you guys have any questions? And
I,
also,
and I picked up a joke for you guys. What do you call a map of an outhouse in a forest? And I will let you put your either unmute and give it or put it in the chat. Where's the creativity, people? It's a shaded relief map. There you go.
Wah,
was
wah,
bad.
wah, wah.
Yeah, there were lots of GIS jokes. We were Googling them during the Iron Map competition.
Oh, that's good.
Nice,
Forrest Gump.
nice, Robin. Forrest Skunk, maybe. So anybody want to know anything more about Utah? I say let's all go. Road trip. The Utah extension maps.
I can grab that.
Yeah, I'm at home, so I don't have, all I got's a laptop.
Let's see.
Right.
Are you guys looking at
Good
the
idea,
comments?
Robin. We'll put together a list of our recommendations and for our next IGIC meeting. When is that coming up? January?
Yes, towards the end of January. Specifically, our IGIC business meeting
It's
is
James.
the 19th of January, Wednesday.
Okay.
This was really good. And I think
It was
you two-
invigorating.
Yeah, well, and you two will be in charge of showing off Iowa and our great natural beauty. And
They didn't have anybody in charge of us. They just let us run wild. Although we hung out with the committee a little bit. They took us to dinner with them one night and let us ask questions, and we had tons of questions.
yeah, but didn't they point you in some right directions for you might want to go this way or go check out, this canyon or that canyon.
No, that was just Art. He's not on their conference committee, I don't think. But we just
Oh.
ran into him at breakfast, and you know how shy we are, especially me. And so they're at the next table over, and we're start
Maybe that
asking
would be
them
good.
questions.
Maybe that would be good to have like a
Have an
host.
official shepherd.
Or not necessarily, but then everyone who's there is going to have recommendations to go somewhere, over to, I don't know, the Boone Railroad when it goes over the Des Moines River. It's gorgeous fun.
You know that I don't know if they'll be coming over with extra time beyond the conference.
Well, like how
we
you
didn't
have.
we didn't have any extra time. We had to bail home. I'll tell you, that little airport that we flew in and out of was like a luxury hotel lobby. It was beautiful, very tiny, and we got kind of a late start getting back because I had map quested the city and not the airport, which happened to be on the other side of the city. So we were running a little bit late, and I was thinking, okay, Amy, don't answer their questions. Throw them the keys and run, because everybody was already through security and on the plane when we arrived. The boarding had been underway for a while when we got to the airport, but
They still let us on the
through-
plane.
yeah, they did let us on. We were the last two. Everybody else was sitting and buckled in and looking at us. And then we had a very short turnaround in Denver too, didn't we? And again, the plane was all loaded before they kind of closed the doors on us as we come in. In you go, okay, lock it up, we're ready to roll. Sit down and buckle up. That was, it could have gone so wrong, but it didn't.
Sounds wonderful. Thank you guys for doing it. I agree with James. We picked great representatives.
And we
job,
need
ladies.
to maybe be thinking about if we want to do this again, and if there's a specific state we want to reach out to. So those are some things to be
This
thinking
is your
about.
chance. And Amy and I decided we should let somebody else do it next time. Although either one of us would be happy to go again if nobody else wants to. But it's a wonderful opportunity and I highly recommend it. And we're so grateful.
Yeah, thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, ladies. Merry Christmas.
Yeah,
See you
take a
later.
little get a little 10-minute break here before you go back to work.